This is a quick video intended simply to show some of the most recent changes I've made to our overlanding setup and how I do a shakedown once I do make changes or add additional gear. One thing that I'm constantly changing is how I store the gear. One of my favorite storage solutions is the Army surplus, military surplus ammo can. So you'll see quite a few of those in my videos, and I'm constantly purchasing more and then rearranging them. I've also used some T-slot aluminum in places, and here you can see where I built a small framework to allow me to secure my fridge. I use that same framework to provide anchor points for additional storage containers in the back of my truck. Okay, once again I promised myself, hey, I'll make a quick video as I load up for a quick shakedown camp out, and it was 2/3 loaded and realized I never took the video. So it's a kind of a quick overview of how I load my gear. This is just going to be a quick weekend shakedown camp out. Still kind of debating with myself. I'm not using my detailed checklists. We'll see how I do, see what I end up forgetting. But I'm just going out to the family farm, mostly just to check out some new gear, including the new ARB locker I put on the truck, although not a lot of opportunities at the farm to test that. So you kind of get a sense of how with a bucket trailer, with proper organization, within 15-20 minutes, all of the essentials are loaded. Probably another 15 to 20 if I need to load out the truck. I fold down the rear seat, I put the fridge, I can hide in there in the corner. I put the fridge in the back and so forth. So I would say at my best, if I'm really awake and motivated, it probably takes me an hour and a half to get both the truck and the trailer loaded. So this is just a good quick test of being able to throw everything in here for a quick weekend trip. You can see in the end I take the rooftop tent down from the ceiling and set it back on top of my gear in the trailer. And one reason I do use checklists, I just remembered in the new setup, this is where I put my battery for my solar cell, and that I use to charge equipment and run my fridge when I'm out camping. So shame on me for not using my checklist immediately, but I'm still going without it. See what other mistakes I make. I've got to load the battery and whatnot right in that space. So in this clip, while my son cleans off the solar panel, you kind of see how the whole thing comes together with the rooftop tent and its framework sitting on top of a table, and that table sits on top of all of the gear that is stowed in the trailer. This way, on a rough, bumpy trail, etc., the load engineering works out pretty well. The stuff really can't move very much at all. Okay, and after many shenanigans, the rig is pretty much set to go. Just checking the lights. Flashers and marker lights all working. Hitch is secure. And we're good to go. Now it's reasonable to ask, why go to all the effort of doing a shakedown camp out? Well, again, I find myself constantly adding gear, rearranging gear, etc. And if it's been a while since I've been out, I like to do a quick shakedown camp out, usually at our family farm, just to make sure that all the gear works the way I intended it to work. So in this particular trip, you can see some stills there of me setting up the campsite with a little help from my brother in a back corner of the family farm that's a couple hours from where I live. Some of the more recent gear that I added either before or after that trip: a platypus water filtration system, some collapsible buckets that I use for dishwashing, and another kind of attempt to work a simple tarp system with collapsible poles. The still coming up here is just me setting it up in the garage, so the next time I'm out camping in a not too windy setup, I can take advantage of the tarps. In fact, I was recently in some snow in the UP, and a simple tarp setup really helped a lot. So when I want to do a quick shakedown of my camping gear, I usually come out to the family farm. In this case, I camped in the opposite corner from where I normally camp. Kind of a cozy little spot here. Although it does have pretty much zero shelter from a northwest wind, or at least a west wind anyway, or sorry, north wind. North is directly to my right now. So that's kind of the way the setup is at a bare minimum. I didn't open any of the other flaps. Got down to about 35, 37 last night. So definitely woke up a few times, pulled on another blanket, woke up, pulled on another blanket. And then this morning I fired up the buddy heater just to make it comfortable to get dressed. So that's what a quick shakedown camp out looks like. Not that of any great consequence. The nice thing about a shakedown in a spot like this is if anything goes wrong, I just hike up to the farmhouse. Not to mention, there's about 3 or 4 towns within a short distance. Quick peek up in the tent. I tossed my bedding here and there, but you can kind of see how I put a piece of fiber cement behind the heater, although it's insulated itself to throw the heat forward. But again, I would not run that non-stop, at least not at that height, because it does get the top of the tent way too hot. So I only use it intermittently, or like last night, not at all. And then I just fired it up when I was going to get dressed this morning. And again, you can see quite a bit of condensation there on the tent. So, is it really worth assembling all this gear for an overnight camp? Normally, no. I would just throw some stuff in the car and go. But my purpose sometimes is just to go through the gear in a case like this where it's been a few months since I've been camping, and just make sure everything is still in proper working order. Well, that's a pretty effective summary of a typical shakedown camping trip. I try not to add too much gear throughout a camping season, because then I find I'm constantly having to do shakedowns and adjustments, and I never really fall into a comfortable groove where I can just enjoy the adventure without the gear becoming somewhat of a distraction. Hopefully you found this video useful. To me, it's a never-ending challenge to strike a balance between the enjoyment of coming up with some new gear with some new capabilities and actually using the gear out on some fun overlanding adventures. So again, in my experience, I try to limit how often I add gear to this setup, and then when I do add gear, I try to do a simple shakedown camp out to make sure that all the gear functions as needed when I get into some more challenging adventures.